All righty. Who's calling the roll tonight? Where are you? There you are. No, you're calling the roll. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Miss Atkinson?
Here.
Mr. Ferguson?
Here.
Dr. Fitz?
Here.
Mr. Howell?
Here.
Mr. Lockwood? Ms. Price? Chair Davenport?
Here. Before we begin our hearing tonight, our counselor, Mr. Hoy Hodges, right there, will tell you what you have to do in order to get your request approved or denied. Mr. Hodges?
And Mr. Chairman, on all these applications tonight, I'd ask the following matters be made part of the record. The joint zoning ordinance of Warren County, along with the comprehensive plan and any of the elements that are in effect tonight, the staff report, any exhibits which are attached to that staff report should also be made part of the record. And if you would, we need to swear in Amy Scott, Jenny Wilby, and Rachel Hurt as witnesses and recognize their qualifications as zoning administrators to testify as expert witnesses tonight.
You ladies swear to tell the truth?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, the first two items on the agenda tonight are requests for, the first is a waiver and the second is a variance. The two are very similar from the standpoint of the findings that are set forth in KRS 100.243. The board must find that the requested variance or waiver will not adversely affect the public health, safety, or welfare, that it will not alter the essential character of the general vicinity, that it will not cause a hazard or a nuisance to the public, that it will not allow an unreasonable circumvention of the requirements of the zoning regulation. And with respect to the waiver, there are some additional findings set forth in section 3.8.4 of the zoning ordinance. All the other items tonight are requests for conditional use permits, and the findings that are required are set forth in section 3.9.5 of the zoning ordinance. The board must find that the requested use is not detrimental to the public health, safety, or welfare in the zone in which it is proposed, that the use will not contribute toward an overburdening of municipal services, that the use will not constitute a nuisance, and that it adequately addresses the review criteria in section 3.9.4 of the zoning ordinance, and it's otherwise in compliance with the zoning regulations, in addition to any specific use standards. And tonight, whether it be requests for a religious facility or short-term rental, there are specific use standards that do apply. But also, the applicant has the burden to adequately address the review criteria in section 3.9.4, as that criteria may apply to the use, and that does include compatibility. So it is the burden of the applicant to adequately address the issue of compatibility. In all these cases tonight, whether it's a request for a variance or conditional use permit, in order to prevail, you need a majority vote of those present. It would have to be an affirmative vote. A pass vote has no force or effect. If anyone is dissatisfied with the decision rendered here tonight, you would have 30 days to file an appeal, and that would go directly to Warren Circuit Court. And I believe that has it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. I got a little ahead of myself. Is there any additional corrections to the minutes from last month? If none, a motion to accept, please.
I so move.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Atkinson, second by who's? Dr. Fitz. Okay.
Miss Atkinson?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
Dr. Fitz?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Ms. Price?
Yes.
Chair Davenport?
Yes. Before we begin our hearing tonight, we're going to make one small adjustment to the agenda. The application for the Bowling Green Assembly of God, that's number 6 on the agenda, we're going to move it down to the bottom. I don't think the ones after this will take very long, so we're going to move it to the bottom if y'all don't mind. Is that okay, Mr. Davenport? Okay, thank you, appreciate it. All righty, our first request tonight, Trampus and Devon Jaggers have filed an application requesting a waiver to allow a proposed detached building to be located in front of the primary residence located at 319 Claypool-Boyce Road. This property is zoned RE residential estate. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We had a pre-application meeting back in November for the property over on Claypool-Boyce Road that you mentioned. The current zoning of the property is RE. The current land use is single-family residential. And there is their waiver site plan for your all's reference. They are requesting a waiver to allow a proposed detached building to be located in front of the primary residence. Looking down to the middle of page 1 for the zoning ordinance reference, section 4.4.5.E.1, no accessory building or structure shall extend beyond the front of the principal structure. The waiver findings are there on the bottom of page 1. And then looking over to page 2, the applicants have provided the requested narrative in the middle there for your all's reference as well. And then looking back to page 1 with some points to consider, the Board of Adjustment should consider if the requested waiver arises from special circumstances which do not generally apply to land in the general vicinity, or if there are any extraordinary or exceptional topographical conditions that would deprive the property owner of the reasonable use of the land. And then the board should also consider if the proposed waiver will alter the essential character of the general vicinity. And that's all that staff have, but I'm happy to answer any
All
questions.
right. Any questions from the board or the staff? Are the applicants here? Applicants over there. Does the board have any questions of the applicants? Any opposition to this request? Any opposition? Motion, please.
Make a motion that we approve the request for a waiver for 319 Claypool-Boyce Road, docket number 2023-B-25. Testimony presented at this public hearing has shown that granting these waivers will not adversely affect public health, safety, or welfare, will not alter the essential character of the general vicinity, will not cause a hazard or nuisance to the public, and will not allow an unreasonable circumvention of the requirements of the zoning regulations. I further find that the waivers will not violate the comprehensive plan, and the extent of waivers of the regulation is the minimum necessary to afford relief to the applicant, and either the strict application of the provisions of the regulations would deprive the applicant of the reasonable use of the land, or would create an unnecessary hardship on the applicants. And I feel like it is compatible with the surrounding land uses.
This is proper motion.
Motion by Dr. Fitz, second by Ms. Atkinson.
Dr. Fitz?
Yes.
Mr. Howell? Yes. Ms. Price?
Yes.
Ms. Atkinson?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
Chair Davenport?
Yes, your request has been approved. Thank you for coming down. Appreciate it. Our next request tonight, Andy Ford applicant and Melainie L. Plumb owner have filed an application requesting a variance of 10 feet from the required 25 feet building setback along the right-of-way to allow a swimming pool to be located 15 feet from the rear property line, located at 1004 St. Andrews Circle. This property is zoned RS1D, single-family residential. Yes, ma'am?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We had a pre-application meeting also back in November for the property over on St. Andrews Circle. The current zoning of the property is RS1D. The current land use is single-family residential. And then there is their site plan for your all's reference. They are requesting a variance of 10 feet from the required 25 feet building setback along the right-of-way to the northwest to allow for a swimming pool to be located 15 feet from the rear property line along Fairway Street. The zoning ordinance reference is there in the middle of page 1, section 4.4.5.E.6.2. Swimming pools. A swimming pool is an accessory use to a residential structure shall be located no closer than 10 feet to the rear property line and no closer than 10 feet to the side property line. And on a corner lot or a through lot, which is what this lot is, the yard setback shall be 25 feet along the streets. The setback shall be measured from the wall of the swimming pool to the nearest property line. The variance findings are on the bottom of page 1 and moving on to page 2, as well as their provided narrative. And then there is a suggested condition there in the middle of page 2. Section 3.7.5 of the zoning ordinance states that in granting a variance, the board may attach thereto such conditions regarding the location of the proposed building, structure, or use as it may deem advisable in the furtherance of the purposes of the ordinance. And that suggested condition is that a revised plat must be recorded, reducing the width of the utility easement along Fairway Street to 15 feet prior to the issuance of a building permit. So looking back to page 1 with some points to consider, the board should consider if the proposed variance will alter the essential character of the general vicinity, and the Board of Adjustment should consider if the requested variance arises from special circumstances which do not generally apply to land in the general vicinity, or if there are any extraordinary or exceptional topographical conditions that would deprive the property owner of the reasonable use of the land. And that's all that I have, and I'm happy to answer your questions.
Very good. Any questions from the board, of the staff, from the board? Applicant is here. See, any opposition to this request? Any opposition? Motion, please.
I make a motion we approve the request for a variance at 1004 St. Andrews Circle, docket number 2023-B-26, with the condition outlined in the staff report. A variance of 10 feet from the required 25-foot building setback along the right-of-way. Testimony presented in this public hearing has shown that granting this variance will not adversely affect the public health, safety, or welfare, will not alter the essential character of the general vicinity, will not cause a hazard or nuisance to the public, and will not allow an unreasonable circumvention of the requirements of zoning regulations.
Do you want to,
And that this variance is compatible with a neighborhood.
do you want to put the condition for the revised plat?
Well,
It's just necessary, isn't it?
It's necessary anyway. Is that correct? Or do we need to do it? Oh, did you put, oh, I'm sorry. He had it in there with the, okay.
I think that was in, I think I.
I'm sorry. I didn't hear you.
Second.
All right. Motion, Dr. Fitz, second by Ms. Atkinson.
Dr. Fitz?
Yes?
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Ms. Price?
Yes.
Ms. Atkinson?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
Chair Davenport?
Yes, your request has been approved. Thank you all for coming down. Have a good evening. Our next request tonight, the Blanford House LLC, care of Matt Blanford, has filed an application for conditional use permit in order to operate a short-term rental on the property located at 409 Church Street in Oakland. This property is zoned AG agricultural. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We had a pre-application meeting back in October. The current zoning of the property on Church Street is ag. Current land use is single-family residential. And it's taking it a second, sorry. There is their site plan for your all's reference. They are requesting a conditional use permit to operate a short-term rental. The zoning ordinance reference is there in the middle of page 1, Article 5, Section 5.1 of the use table. A conditional use permit is required to operate a short-term rental on property zoned ag. Looking down to the specific use standards on the bottom of page 1, and moving over to page 2 with the supplied conditions from the applicant. Number 1, there will be a maximum of 3 rooms for rent. Number 2, a maximum of 3 guest vehicles in the designated parking area. Number 3, quiet hours will be from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. And number 4, there will be no signage on the property. The conditional use permit findings are there on page 2. And then looking back to page 1 with some points to consider. The board should consider the impact on permanent workforce housing availability in this part of the county if the existing single-family home is converted into a short-term rental. The applicants have also filed a conditional use permit for a short-term rental at 417 Church Street, which is located 3 properties down. The board should consider if the proposed use, including a concentration of 2 short-term rentals, is appropriate in the ag zone. And the board should consider if the proposed use is compatible with the surrounding area, including the existing single-family residential uses adjacent to the property. That's all that I have, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the board or the staff?
Am I right or wrong that we've had other requests for short-term rentals in Oakland?
I believe that we may have, but
We have one.
There
Just
was
one.
one.
Only one?
We have one. Is any other question of the staff on the board? Is the applicant here? I think we got some questions for you, sir, if you don't mind. And we need to swear you in. If we'd give you your full name and address to the secretary, please.
Matt Blanford, 504 Church Street, Oakland.
And do you swear to tell the truth, sir?
Swear to tell the truth.
First thing to ask you is, this is the business, and obviously that's pretty much a single-family residential neighborhood there. And it is right across the street from a school. In the past, we had a very similar request. and there was a lot of concern about short-term rentals with people coming in that close to a grade school, security, safety, what have you. How do you feel like that this would be compatible with that neighborhood, being everything else single family and no businesses up and down?
Yeah, well, I mean, I live on the same street, so I feel it's very compatible. If I was worried about safety, I wouldn't be putting my family at risk by having a short-term rental.
Sure. Okay.
But how's that property being currently used?
Right now, the two houses are vacant.
But prior to that, how long have they been
One-
vacant?
So one's been vacant for over a year. I've been basically remodeling the house.
Oh, okay.
And the other one I used as rental for a little bit until we applied for the Airbnb.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board of the applicant? Question of the applicant? Thank you, sir. Any opposition to this request? Any opposition? A motion, please?
I make the motion.
That we approve the conditional use permit docket number 2023-C-68 for short-term rental located at 409 Church Street with the conditions as presented in the staff report. Testimony presented at this public hearing has shown that the use is not detrimental to the public health, safety, or welfare in the zone which is proposed. The use will not contribute to an overburden of municipal services. Use will not result in increased traffic congestion, additional parking problems, substantial increase in population density, environmental problems or constitute a nuisance, and if the use otherwise meets the requirements of the zoning ordinance. And this is compatible with the neighborhood.
That is a proper motion.
Okay, motion by Dr. Fitz, a second.
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Ferguson.
Dr. Fitz?
Yes?
Mr. Howell? No. Ms. Price?
Yes.
Ms. Atkinson?
No, I feel it's not appropriate for the residential area, and it does affect the neighborhood.
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
Chair Davenport?
I vote no. I think it's not compatible with the neighborhood either. That has been denied, sir. You have to have 4 votes, yes votes, in order to get it. So you got 30 days to take it to circuit court. Our next request tonight, the Blanford House, LLC, care of Matt Blanford, has filed an application for a conditional use permit in order to operate a short-term rental on the property located at 417 Church Street in Oakland. This property is zoned AG agricultural. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We had a pre-application meeting on October the 24th for the property that you mentioned. The current zoning is agriculture. The current land use is single-family residential. And there is the site plan that the applicants have provided, and that can be found on page 7 of your packet as well. And again, the applicants are requesting a CUP to operate a short-term rental. Below that is the zoning ordinance reference, Article 5, Section 5.1. A conditional use permit is required to operate a short-term rental on property zoned agriculture. Below that are the specific use standards for short-term rental. Looking over at page 2 for the supplied conditions, maximum of 4 rooms for rent, maximum of 4 guest vehicles in the designated parking area. Quiet hours will be from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., and there will be no signage on the property. Below that are the conditional use permit findings for your reference. Looking back to page 1 for points to consider, the board should consider the impact on permanent workforce housing availability in this part of the county if the existing single-family home is converted into a short-term rental. The applicants have also filed a CUP application for a short-term rental at 409 Church Street, which is located 3 properties down. The board should consider if the proposed use, including a concentration of 2 short-term rentals, is appropriate in the ag zone, and the board should consider if the proposed use is compatible with the surrounding area, including the existing single-family residential uses adjacent to the property. That's all we have for staff report. Can answer any questions.
Does the board have any questions of the staff on this one? The applicant is here. Does the board have any additional questions of the applicant? Any reason to call him back up? Any opposition to this request? Opposition? Motion, please.
I make the motion to deny the conditional use permit docket number 2023-C-69 for a short-term rental located at 417 Church Street. I think that the residential area is not appropriate for a short-term rental, and it will affect the general neighborhood.
It's a proper motion.
Okay, motion by Ms. Atkinson, second. Second by Mr. Howell.
Ms. Atkinson?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson?
No.
Dr. Fitz?
No.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Ms. Price?
No.
Chair Davenport?
Yes, that motion has been denied also, sir. Thank you for coming down. Our next request tonight, 2 Rabbits Farms LLC, care of Brenda Owsley and Quintessa Norris, have filed an application for conditional use permit in order to operate a short-term rental on the property located at 4225 Bell Rive Circle. This property is zoned RE residential estate. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We had a pre-application meeting for this property on May 11. The current zoning is RE, residential estate. Current land use is single-family residential, and the applicants did supply a site plan, and that can be found on page 7 for your reference. And again, they are requesting to operate a short-term rental. There's the zoning ordinance reference midway through the page. Again, Article 5, Section 5.1 does require a CUP to operate a short-term rental on property zoned RE. Below that are the specific use standards for short-term rental. Page 2 is where the conditions are located. The applicants supplied 5 conditions, 1 being a maximum of 3 rooms for rent. Number 2, a maximum of 3 guest vehicles in the parking area. Number 3, quiet hours will be from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Number 4, there'll be no signage on the property. And number 5, if the property is ever sold or the applicant ceases the use, the CUP will be null and void. Below that are the conditional use permit findings for your reference. Looking back to page 1, to the points to consider, the board should consider the impact on permanent workforce housing availability in this part of the county if the existing single-family home is converted into a short-term rental, and the board should consider if the proposed use is compatible with the surrounding area, including the existing single-family residential uses adjacent to the property. That's all we have for a staff report.
Any questions of the staff from the board? Anybody got a question of the staff? Sure. Who said I do?
Nobody.
Lloyd, you did?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
The zoning, RE, single family,
Residential estate.
okay, as far as the E, RE.
Yeah. So that's just that's a zoning designation that it's single family, it's a sewered zoning designation, a non-sewered zoning designation, and it's a minimum 1 acre lot for those. So,
Thank you.
yeah,
I want
you're
a clear
welcome.
definition on single family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions of the staff? Applicant here? Yes. Would you step up, please? We need to swear you in. If we
Yes.
could get your full name and address, please.
Quintessa Norris, 4225 Bell Reeve Circle, Bowling Green, Kentucky, 42101.
And do you swear to tell the truth, ma'am?
I do.
As you pointed out, this is a single-family neighborhood, and you're trying to open up a business in a single-family neighborhood with people coming and going all the time. How do you feel like that's compatible with that small road in there with a single-family neighborhood?
So it is a mixed-use area with the county having a public park there, with the boat ramp having public access. Also, I work for the American Red Cross, so I only use this as an Airbnb when I'm deployed. This is actually my residential property, and it's only operated as a business when I'm not using the home for residents. And again, this is a mixed-use area. There's multiple Airbnbs on Barren River Road, and with the heavy traffic that comes in at the boat ramp, that road is used to it.
If you're renting it when you are gone, who is responsible for overlooking the property? Is something...
I have a property
Stuff goes
manager,
on.
and then I'm not the only owner of the business. So the other name listed there, Brenda Owsley, she's also the owner of the business with me as well.
Any questions from the board of the applicant?
Yes, I do. Parking 3 places parking? Obviously, that's a driveway that is sloped. Where would 3 cars park safely to get in and out of that, on that road and out that driveway?
There is so there's the driveway that can fit 3 cars just in the driveway, but then there's a turnabout that's over to the side of the driveway, connected to the driveway.
But you're suggesting 3 cars would be end to end in the driveway?
No, there is a turnabout to the side, so a car or 2 cars can park there. And then the way that I've seen it done when there is an Airbnb or when I've had guests over is 1 or 2 cars in the driveway, 2 on the turnabout there.
If one of the cars has to leave and the other 2 are in the way, though, that somebody's going to have to back out on the street.
Correct.
Which is a small, very small road.
Yeah, okay. All right, any other questions of the applicant? Mr. Ferguson?
Mr. Chairman, I've realized that I probably need to recruit myself from this vote. I have a long relationship with the family,
Okay,
and
Sure.
it should be better if I do that.
all right. Any other questions from the board?
I thought I saw a for sale sign on the property, is that true?
No, there's a conditional permit sign.
Only that, okay.
Yeah.
That's a different one. Yeah. Okay, any other questions of the applicant? Thank you, ma'am, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any opposition to this request? Any opposition? Motion, please.
I make the motion to deny the conditional use permit docket number 2023-C-70 for a short-term rental located at 4225 Bell Reeve Circle because it is a single-family residential area. Commercial venture is not appropriate.
It's a proper motion.
Okay, motion by Ms. Atkinson, second by Dr. Fitz.
Ms. Atkinson?
Yes.
Dr. Fitz?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Ms. Price?
Yes.
Chair Davenport?
Yes, your request has been denied, ma'am, sorry. Our next request tonight, Trung Sparkman applicant and Trung Sparkman and Tran Nugent have filed an application for a conditional use permit in order to operate a short-term rental on the property located at 5310 Morgantown Road. This property is zoned RE residential estate also. Rachel?
Thank you, Chair Davenport. We had a pre-application meeting back in October. Let me skip to the slides here. There we go. For the property you just referenced at 5310 Morgantown Road, the current zoning is RE residential estate, and the current land use is single family. This is the site plan that was supplied by the applicants, and the request this evening is to operate a short-term rental. The zoning ordinance reference is in the middle of page 1, section 5.1 of the zoning ordinance requires a conditional use permit to operate a short-term rental on property zoned RE. Looking on page 2, you'll see the 5 conditions that were supplied by the applicant. 1, there would be a maximum of 5 rooms for rent. 2, a maximum of 5 guest vehicles. 3, quiet hours are from 9 p.m. to 8 a.m. 4, there will be no signage on the property. And 5, guests will use Morgantown Road entrance to access the property. The conditional use permit findings are listed on page 2 for your reference. And then if we go back to page 1, we've noted that we do not have any points to consider pending any public testimony and the hearing this evening. That is all for the staff report, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the board or the staff? Any questions from the board and staff? All right. Applicant here? Who's the applicant? Would you mind stepping up, please, sir? Excuse me. Can we get your full name and address, please?
Yes, Trung Sparkman, 105 Spring Hill Avenue, Bowling Green, Kentucky, 42101.
Do you swear to tell the truth, sir?
That is true.
You heard us ask some others. This is a residential neighborhood, and you're trying to open a business up right in the middle of it. How is that compatible with that neighborhood, especially with 5 rooms to rent out? That's almost like a small hotel.
Yes, this house being bed and breakfast when I bought it from Dr. David Livingston. So it's been operated bed and breakfast before, and when I purchased in 2016, I was intending to keep going at bed and breakfast, but bed and breakfast is kind of dying out, so Airbnb get very popular, and we joined the Airbnb.
Mm-hmm.
So this house being always been as a bed and breakfast, and it's on it's out in the county, and
On a
It's-
very busy road,
you what?
on a very busy road.
Yeah, it's very busy, bro, and right there on Rich Hill, and we got a little intersection there, a little bit out in the county, so I think I want reuse of what used to be a bed and breakfast.
And you say this has operated as a bed and breakfast? We haven't approved a bed and breakfast for that property out there. Was it operating illegally, or do we know?
Prior to when I purchased.
Requirement. He says it's been operating.
What's that?
But we never have
Prior
approved
to.
it, I know that. No.
Can't either.
I've been here for 30-something years, and I know Dr. Livingston, and we never approved a bed and breakfast for that location, but if you say it was, then
Not
I
that
guess it
we're
was.
aware of.
Not that
I
we're
don't-
aware of, anyway, yeah. All right, any other questions of the applicant from the board? You don't think that driveway is a little scary for people coming in and out of?
Well, on the other side of the road, the main, the road that, on the roundabout, is more safer than, on the other road. I know on the other one it's a blind spot, but we have another main road right there, you see on the corner there, on this edge right here in front of the house.
Right.
It's not blind spot, but on the other end where the share road with the county, that a little bit county blind spot.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, any other questions from the board? Thank you, sir.
Well,
Oh, sorry.
5 vehicles seems like a lot of vehicles. What is your proposal?
5
there?
rooms.
Are you going to have 5 different families, or how's it going to work there?
Sir?
You got 5 vehicles.
Right, if you see on the right side of the house, there's a really big parking
I've
area.
seen the house.
And then on the back, on the left, the garage, is a very big parking there too. And then we have a big roundabout on the area there.
All right, thank you, sir. Any opposition to this request? Any opposition? Motion, please.
I make the motion to deny the conditional use permit docket number 2023-C-72 for a short-term rental located at 5310 Morgantown Road because it is a business in an inappropriate area of a residential neighborhood.
Proper motion.
All right, motion by Ms. Atkinson, second by Mr. Howell.
Ms. Atkinson?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
Dr. Fitz?
Yes.
Mr. Howell? Yes. Ms. Price?
Yes.
Chair Davenport?
Yes, that request has been denied, sir. You got 30 days to appeal to circuit court. Our next request tonight, River LLC, care of Kevin Goff, has filed an application for a conditional use permit in order to operate a short-term rental on the property located at 747 Beach Bend Road. This property is zoned RE Residential Estate and F General Flood District. Rachel.
Thank you, Chair Davenport. We had a pre-application meeting back in November for the property at 747 Beach Bend Road. Property, as you mentioned, is zoned RE Residential Estate. Part of the property is also located in the floodplain, and the property is currently vacant. The applicant supplied this site plan with the application. The request again is for a short-term rental, and that reference comes from section 5.1 of the zoning ordinance. There are 4 conditions on page 2 supplied by the applicant. 1, there would be a maximum of 4 rooms for rent. 2, a maximum of 4 guest vehicles in the designated parking area. 3, quiet hours will be from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. And 4, there will be no signage on the property. The conditional use permit findings are there for your reference on page 2. And then we have 3 points for your consideration on page 1. The first is that the board should consider if the proposed use, including a concentration of 2 short-term rentals, is appropriate in the RE zone, compatible with the surrounding area, and if it will alter the character of the area. The applicant was approved in 2020 for a conditional use permit for a short-term rental on the adjacent property at 803 Beach Bend Road. Second, the board should consider if a concentration of 2 short-term rentals will result in increased traffic congestion or constitute a nuisance in the area. And last, the board should consider the impact on permanent workforce housing availability in this part of the county. That is all for the staff report, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Did you hide that sign in all those bushes there, or did the bushes go around the sign? It was hard to find.
Oh, I don't know. James
Did y'all
put the
see
sign
it?
out.
Did you see it when it went by? It took me 3 times to find it. I'm like, what? Anyway, all right, any questions of the board, of the
Well, first of all,
staff?
what is meant by proper permitting and procedures before proceeding?
Because it has to be built.
Oh, on number 6, which one are you talking about? Sorry.
Beach Bend Road?
No, where are you?
Under the staff review summary.
Oh, at the very bottom. Sorry. That's because the property is vacant.
So you.
So,
it has
so
to be
before
building.
any structure could be built on the property, the owner would still have to go through the building permit process before any construction could occur.
And what assurances do we have that there'll be the parking that's shown on this in the back of the building to make sure there's adequate parking?
So our staff is one part of the review anytime a building permit is turned in. And so when there's a use that requires a conditional use permit, either Jenny, Amy, or myself will work with the permit review staff and make sure that what's turned in for the building permit matches what was approved for the conditional use permit.
All right. Any other questions from the staff of the board?
How many other properties have we approved of short-term rentals on Beach Bend Road?
The one that's immediately adjacent at 803 would be to the
That's
east.
the only one.
There's one right next door to
Yes.
it, yeah. All right. Any other questions of the staff? And is the applicant here? Thank you. Does the board have any questions of the applicant on this one? Any opposition to this request? Motion, please.
I make the motion to approve the conditional use permit docket number 2023-C-73 for a short-term rental located at 747 Beach Bend Road with the conditions as presented in the staff report. The testimony presented in this public hearing has shown that the use is not detrimental to the public health, safety, or welfare in the zone in which it is proposed. The use will not contribute toward an overburdening of municipal services. The use will not result in increased traffic congestion, additional parking problems, substantial increase in population density, environmental problems, or constitute a nuisance, that the use otherwise meets the requirements of the zoning ordinance.
Did you address the issue of compatibility in that motion?
I'm sorry,
If the
compatibility.
property is sold, this will be null and void.
Okay, we need to add that in the event the property changes hands, the conditional use permit would be null and void, and the approval is contingent on proper permitting and appropriate for the area. Does that take care of it, Hoy?
Proper motion.
All right. Motion by Ms. Atkinson, a second. Second? Anybody? Second by Mr. Howell.
Ms. Atkinson?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
Dr. Fitz?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Ms. Price?
Yes.
Chair Davenport?
Yes, that request has been approved, sir. Thank you very much.
Chair, I may have should have spoke sooner. Likewise with property next door, it's owned an LLC. The only caveat I would ask to Ms. Atkinson's statement, whether it changes hands, if it changes hand to another LLC I own, that particular conditional use permit still be valid. If it changes hand to an entity or another person I do not have a relationship with, at that point, it would be cease to be valid.
That's Mr. Hodges. Is that appropriate?
I was trying to think what the exact wording of the motion was. You know, I would assume that would encompass.
I just said if it changed
Changed ownership.
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 So changed ownership, would that imply that if he changes LLCs, but it's still the same, does that imply the same ownership?
Same owner.
Well, that's one where you have gray area. I mean, you have the,
Board, I'll be happy to do that. I just want.
I'm not opposed to, as long as it's his LLC,
Right,
it
right, that's what I-
continuing. So is that appropriate? So I suppose from a motion standpoint, we need to make it clear that it's a different entity or a different individual who owns it.
Well, if he's
That's
still
what
the
I'm
same,
concerned.
if it's just a different LLC, but he's still the owner of the LLC, it should be the,
That's why I
Okay.
say, you know, it's a gray area from the standpoint, he's still the member of this LLC.
Yeah.
He may change the LLC, but still be a member. But then again, it is technically a different entity, so.
don't change the name of the
You know, we're splitting
LLC.
hairs.
Yeah, just don't change the LLC and we
We
won't
have
have
no
a
reason for
problem.
you to change the name, do you?
For estate planning purposes only.
Oh, okay.
If it becomes an issue, I'll bring it back and forth.
All right, that's a good idea.
Thank you guys very much.
Yeah, when you change it, if you go down, they tell you have to come back, then we'll see you then. How's that? That work, Mr. Hodges? Yeah, thank you, appreciate it. Our next request tonight, Elite Hosting Group LLC applicant and Al Hilli, owner, have filed an application for a conditional use permit in order to operate 2 short-term rentals on the property located at 219 Moss Creek Avenue, apartments A and B. This property is zoned RM4 multifamily residential. Rachel?
Thank you, Chair Davenport. We had a pre-application meeting back in November for the property you just referenced on Moss Creek Avenue. The property is currently zoned RM4, multifamily residential, and the current land use is also multifamily residential. This is the site plan that was submitted with the application, and again, the applicants have applied for a conditional use permit to operate 2 short-term rentals. Section 5.1 of the zoning ordinance outlines the requirements for a conditional use permit in the RM4 zone. And you'll see on page 2 that the applicants supplied 5 conditions. Number 1, there would be a maximum of 2 rooms for rent per unit. Number 2, a maximum of 6 vehicles in the designated parking area. 3 quiet hours will be from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. 4, there will be no signage on the property. And 5, if the property is ever sold or the applicant ceases the use, the CUP will be null and void. The conditional use permit findings are there for your reference on page 2. And then on page 1, you'll see that we did not have any points for your consideration pending any public hearing testimony and the hearing this evening. That is all for the staff report, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the board of the staff? Is the applicant here? Applicant's here. Does the board have any questions of the applicant?
Yes.
Okay. Would you mind coming up, please? We'll need to swear you in, ma'am. Your full name and address?
Erica Wilburn, 264 Allen Street, Burkesville, Kentucky.
You swear to tell the truth, ma'am?
I do.
All right, Dr. Fitz has a question for you.
You know, I've, of course, been to see the property, and I was just curious about 6 guest vehicles for 2 out of those 4 apartments. Sounds like a lot of vehicles. I just wonder if that number should be that large. What do you think? Very, very, very densely populated area. The streets are very narrow on
Okay.
purpose.
For this particular property, those spaces are available. So I was just trying to put what was available for those parking spaces for those 2 units.
Would you agree to 4 vehicles instead of 6?
Oh, yes,
Okay,
definitely.
all right. That help you? All right.
They come to speak. These things are up to slow.
If we reduce the, scratch that. There's only 2 rooms per unit for rent, so that should still work because
Yeah.
we've got to have at least 1 space per
Right.
unit.
That's
So,
why-
Yep, so there's still, yep.
That's what I thought.
The math
So
still
4
works, sorry.
That's all right.
Okay.
Ignore me.
Yeah. So 4 vehicles.
Consider it done.
You have no problem with that?
No, sir.
Okay. Any other questions of the applicant from the board? All right, thank you, ma'am.
Thank
Any
you.
opposition to this request? Any opposition? All right, motion, please.
Make a motion, we approve the conditional use permit docket number 2023-C-74 for short-term rental located at 219 Moss Creek Avenue, apartments A and B, with the conditions as presented in the staff report, with the amendment of number 2 to 4 guest vehicles in the designated parking area. The testimony presented in the public hearing has shown that the use is not detrimental to the public health, safety, or welfare. In the zone in which it's proposed, the use will not contribute to an overburdening of municipal services. The use will not result in increased traffic congestion, additional parking problems, a substantial increase in population density, environmental problems, or constitute a nuisance, and that it otherwise meets the requirements of the zoning ordinance, and it is compatible with the neighborhood.
There's a proper motion.
Second.
Motion by Dr. Fitz, second by Ms. Atkinson.
Dr. Fitz?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Ms. Price?
Yes.
Ms. Atkinson?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
Chair Davenport?
Yes, your request has been approved, ma'am, with 4 parking places, okay? All right, thank you very much. All right, our next request tonight, Bowling Green Assembly of God, Inc., applicant, and Assembly of God, LLC owner, has filed an application for conditional use permit to operate a religious institution on the property 632 Matlock Road. And this property is zoned AG agriculture. Who's going to do this one? You are? All righty.
Let me get back there. All right. We had a pre-application meeting on May the 31st for this property. Its current zoning is agriculture, and current land use is also agriculture. And then the applicants did supply a site plan, and can be found on page 7 for your reference. And again, they are requesting a CEP to operate a religious institution. There's a zoning ordinance reference, Article 5, Section 5.1, the use table. A conditional use permit is required to operate a religious institution on property zoned agriculture. On the bottom of page 1 starts their supplied conditions from the application, or from the applicants. Number 1, any new access to the property and/or future road improvements will be coordinated with and approved by the Warren County Public Works Department. Number 2, the applicant shall coordinate any sanitary provisions with approval from the Barren River District Health Department. Number 3, there shall be a maximum of 150 people in the congregation, with exceptions for some periodic special events. Number 4, church activities shall take place between 6 a.m. and 9 p.m., with exceptions for special days, including but not limited to holiday celebrations, weddings, and funerals. They continue on page 2, number 5. The building shall be brought into compliance with applicable building codes for the proposed religious institution use prior to occupancy of the building for such use. Number 6, the driveway will be widened to be at least 22 feet wide. And number 7, signage will be monument style and externally illuminated only. Below that are the conditional use permit findings for your reference. And if we go back to page 1 to points to consider, the board should consider if the the use of a religious institution is compatible with the agriculture zone and the existing residential use in the vicinity. And the board should consider if the proposed use will result in increased traffic congestion or constitute a nuisance in the area. That is all we have for a staff report. Can answer any questions.
Any questions from the board of the staff? All right. Applicants are here, I'm sure. Yeah. Yes, ma'am. And
Good evening, I'm Katie Embry.
You're an attorney. We
I
don't have to
am.
swear you in. You're
I
legal.
appreciate that.
All right, thank you.
Katie Embry with Bowie. I'm here on behalf of the Assembly of God and all of my new friends here. We would ask that the board consider allowing a congregation that's been in existence for some time now. They are asking to relocate to this building that they purchased. They purchased it in August of this year and are asking that they utilize the existing structure. They're not asking that we build a new structure. We're not asking to add on. We're not asking for more parking. There's already adequate parking. There's already adequate square footage. This is a very large building, but the congregation is about 100 to 130 members. That includes men, women, and children. They are asking to operate this church typical to what you would expect from another church that you may drive by on the way out to this property, like Three Springs Baptist Church, which is also zoned agricultural. They are asking that they be able to use this as a house of worship, a place to meet, to have weddings, funerals, Bible studies throughout the week. We would anticipate primarily the buildings would be used on the weekends for those worship services and then on Wednesdays for the midweek service. They also have occasional Bible studies in the building. Otherwise, the traffic to and from the property during the week would be limited to primarily the pastor, who would have an office in the building. I wanted to clean up a couple of things, and then certainly I'm available for any questions that you may have. The existing use for the structure when my clients purchased the property was not agricultural. In fact, the front portion of that larger, I'll call it a shop building, was actually utilized for someone to live in. It has been retrofitted for some sort of small apartment, is what I would call it. And they also utilized the remaining portion of the building somewhat as a warehouse. They had an online business, a boutique of some sort in which they sold things out of. So this property, this specific portion of this, what used to be a larger parcel, was not just used for agricultural purposes most recently. It's been used for other things for quite some time. When the property was listed, clients jumped on it immediately, made a very competitive offer, and were able to purchase that property quickly, always with the intention to establish a church here. We would suggest to you that a congregation of the size of 100 to 130 is not going to overburden the current traffic pattern. There's plenty of homes in the area, and we understand that, but this type of traffic is not going to overburden the road. This property is about a half mile off of the Three Springs Road area. That's the area that you're orienting yourself toward. Those are the specific things I wanted to point out to you. Again, emphasizing we're not building a new building. The building's already there. The primary, what you would see on the outside, frankly, would be widening of the driveway to make sure there's a 22-foot ingress and egress point there from Matlock Road. Otherwise, the remodeling and the construction would be on the inside of the property to add insulation to bring it up to current code.
What's the building being used for now?
Well, right now, it's not being utilized for anything. Since my clients have purchased it, they understood they had to have a conditional use permit before they could utilize the structure as the church. So upon advice, they've not been using it as a church now. They've been renting another space in which to have their meetings for worship.
They
But
might
the
have tried.
purchase-
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, but the purchase was not contingent on approval?
No, ma'am, it was not. And I would have liked for that to have been, but it wasn't. So what we have now is a congregation that has made a substantial purchase, and they're willing to abide by all the conditions necessary to establish their church home here.
And where is the congregation currently meeting?
They rent a space from the Seventh-day Adventist Church. The Seventh-day Adventists meet on Saturdays. My clients meet on Sundays. So they utilize a pre-existing structure now as a tenant, if you will. And they have grown and have the means by which to have their own building and their own place of worship.
As you stated, though, that's pretty much a residential neighborhood. The houses surrounding it are pretty good-sized estate homes.
They are.
And then almost directly across the street is an entrance to a large subdivision.
Correct.
And the way Matlock Road is going, there's going to be a lot more houses built up and down that road, more than likely. I mean, depending on what the planning and zoning board does, but
Sure.
There's a lot of land out there that can still be developed, and that is a pretty narrow road, and Three Springs Road is really already a heavily, heavily traveled road, as you well know. And when you mentioned passing other churches, I think some of those churches in that area were there, and the neighborhood and the area is built up around the churches, rather than the churches going in after the neighborhood's already been established. So I just kind of like to, I know that used to be a church out there, it's pretty well by itself. And now, obviously, there's a lot of other stuff going on through there. All right, any other questions of the lady from the board? All right, thank you, ma'am. Any opposition to this request? Yes, sir.
Chair Davenport, members of the board, my name is Chris Davenport. I guess I'm legal too, mostly. I'm here on behalf of a number of neighbors. I'm going to recite those to you. I believe present tonight are Andy and Chris Baker. They're seated behind me. Pam Johnson, Brent and Susan Folk, I know they're here. Irene and Daniel Boma, Dean and Susan Hastings, I know they're here. And Ty Wynn, who could not be here. If I could give you some idea, do we have a laser pointer still?
It won't show on the TV. You got to use the one.
The mouse? Let's see if I can get a closer up. Okay. So the folks live right here, if you can see my mouse.
Is that on the Three Springs side of the road? I want to make sure.
Correct.
Okay.
If you're looking at the subject property, it'd be immediately to
On
your
the
left.
left. Okay.
The Bakers live right here, and Ty Wynn recently purchased this acreage here for a home. So, like I said, all these folks live in the immediate vicinity, 684 Matlock, 729 Matlock, 489 Matlock, so forth and so on. A few points I would like to make tonight, and I will try to be brief and keep my comments concise. I want to make sure the board understands what comes along with a religious institution CUP. Section 513 of the ordinance would allow, if this CUP is granted on this subject property, it would allow church services, it would allow weddings, it would allow funerals, it would allow gatherings, very broad. It would allow a cemetery. It would allow residential living facilities that are in conjunction with the religious institution, such as a parsonage or abbey. So you could have a myriad of uses that would go along with the CUP that may be beyond what we think of what the applicant's asking. It's the first point I want to make. Secondly, I appreciate the history that Ms. Embry gave. It's largely consistent when she talks about how this parcel came to be. I want to point out, though, that this parcel was constructed as an accessory structure to the residential structure that the folks live in. If you look on the map, this is the folks. At one time, this property was combined. It was one parcel. The reason this structure is sitting behind the front setback of the folks' home is because it was accessory. I've got some photos I want to share with you. Okay, well, let me look at, you've got, I think, one here. I won't be able to get close enough to it. Can you help me with the photos, I guess?
Chris, was that home a bed and breakfast at one time? Is that the house that was the bed and breakfast?
I think that's true, and the only reason I know that is I think I heard one of my clients ask the folks, would you like to return to a bed and breakfast after your earlier hearing tonight? Okay. And they said it in jest.
Okay.
But apparently that used to be the use of that structure. It is currently a single-family home the folks live in. Right. So here's some photographs I brought that my clients took, and this is the first one I want to point out to you. That's taken from the folks' back patio. The structure, and this is in black and white, and I'm sorry, they provide it in color, and I guess when we printed it and sent it, it turned to black and white. That white door is the structure that the applicant's talking about. That's how close these buildings are. The planning map has a neat little measurement function, and according to my measurement, the parking lot to the property line is about 20 feet. The parking lot to the edge of the home is about 60 feet. The structure to the edge of the home is about 90 feet. But I think the photograph's worth 1,000 words, maybe 10,000. In fact, this is taken from the folks' house. Since the applicants bought this property, I thought it was in October, maybe it was in August, they've constructed this fence. They have a right to do that. I can't say they didn't. But that gives you an idea how close to the property line these two properties are. In fact, when the property was purchased, there was still a walkway in between this patio and that structure that the previous owner had used. My understanding was, and I think it was confirmed tonight, prior to the purchasing of this property, The now owner and applicant consulted with planning and zoning, were told they would need a CUP, and I think we're heavily advised they should probably seek that first. And I'll just tell you, I think they've made a grave mistake by getting the cart ahead of the horse and possibly being a bit presumptuous. To the heart of the application, in your report, in your staff report, you have a number of policies that they've asked you to consider. Those are found on page 3 of your staff report. I guess it's page 2 of your staff report. Some of those have been further kind of boiled down into 2 points that the staff has suggested you consider on page 1. And I'm going to touch on those a little bit. The first thing I want to add is the burden is on the applicant here to show that all those policies are complied with. I respectfully will submit to you, I don't think they've done that. That being said, let me tell you how I think this application just falls woefully short in this setting. Number one is the proximity of the buildings. Not all parcels are alike. And when we compare Three Springs Road and churches that are hundreds of feet from structures, parking lots that are hundreds of feet from structures, that's not the same thing as what we're looking at right here. Secondly, if you look closely at the conditions that were suggested, there really are no conditions. To say we're going to operate till 9 o'clock, which would be onerous enough if that was your home, but to say we're going to operate till 9 o'clock except on times that we have special events, which is we don't know when. That's the discretion of the applicant. To say we're going to limit it to 150 people except when we have special events. I was always taught you built your church for Easter. You know, no pun intended. But you plan these conditions. I tell that to the Planning Commission all the time. You plan your conditions for the absolute maximum. You don't plan a condition, we anticipate to have this many people except for when we have more. They've pointed out the noise and whether you've got to ask yourself whether that will be a nuisance in the area given its current use. And the area's current use, Chair Davenport, is undoubtedly single-family residential homes. No doubt about that. Now, the last thing I want to touch on is the traffic and the roads. And every other Thursday, I'm before the Planning Commission, and we talk a lot about roads. We talk about it every 2 weeks. What's different with your all's board is this board does not receive opinions of traffic folks. And this board does not consider obligations by applicants to improve traffic. We do that when there's a rezoning. If you bring a commercial property onto a road that is built to residential standards, you should expect to improve the road. It's a condition of your zoning. In this case, the applicant has said, we're going to build a 22-foot wide driveway, which I would expect. That's a commercial width. Matlock Road is between 18 and 19 feet. If you've driven down Matlock Road, you'll see it's got the one stripe down the middle. It doesn't even have proper striping given its width. It's an old county road. It's just nonsensical to me to suggest that this will not have a negative impact on the traffic and it won't overburden the traffic when we're requiring the applicant to build a better driveway than the road they have to drive down to get to it. And I mean, that's the clearest point I could make on the standards y'all have in front of you. So I've got folks here. If you're opposed to this, I'd ask you please just raise your hand if you're here. They've asked me to represent them. They don't need to come up here and say the things I've just said. But I'll bring it back. The burden is on the applicant. Frankly, if the burden was on me, I think I've showed you why this application doesn't meet the requirements. I feel bad that they've purchased a property without asking first, but I dare set a precedent where, you know, someone's encouraged to do that. So I would ask that, for a motion and for a vote that denies this application. Thank you all.
Thanks, sir. Rachel, when does a traffic impact study jump in place? Somebody?
So, because of the number of the congregation size and the number of vehicles that would be on the site, I think it's 33 parking spaces, or 30, it was somewhere, around 30 to 35 spaces. This wouldn't trigger a traffic impact study. The applicants and their conditions did agree to coordinate access to Matlock Road with the County Public Works Department. So,
Okay.
I had email correspondence with Josh Moore, who is the Public Works Director for Warren County, and he didn't have any issue with the road width or the widening the entrance there to 20.
Okay.
So.
All right. Would you like to respond to Mr. Davenport? Thank you, ladies.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And a wise man once told me if you fail to plan, then you plan to fail. So I brought a laser pointer with me so that I could emphasize something to you all really quickly. Do you mind if I go back a couple? How did he get to here? I don't know how he got here.
PowerPoint presentation, or do you need
I need your PowerPoint presentation, please. Thank you. While she's getting that ready for me, because I'm woefully inadequate at the technology that we have here, I'd like to remind this board of the minutes from April 13th. You all approved almost an identical CUP for an almost identical church. I'm talking about docket number 2023C14, the Galilee Korean Baptist Church. That was the applicant. The property owner was Mr. Modesto Murillo. That property is located off of Crewston Drive, and I may be mispronouncing the road name. I apologize if I am. But ultimately, that property was in a residential area, almost exclusively a residential area, not dissimilar to what we're looking at here, which I may not even be able to use this. Will it not show up up there?
Have to use it.
So it doesn't even work. So what we're looking at here, and I think Mr. Davenport emphasized this for you, our parcel here that is outlined in yellow was originally a larger parcel, 14 acres in total. And the smaller portion there that the folks have purchased is 4 acres or so, leaving us about 10.5 acres. I would suggest to you, based on where the property line was placed when these properties were subdivided, there is absolutely no use for that land and that structure that would not offend the quiet use and enjoyment that the folks are bringing before you today. Where the property line lies right now, what could possibly go in there in that structure that is already existing? Based on where the property line lies, I'm not sure what could go in that property. We are asking for a house of worship. We have not suggested to the board that we install a 24-hour drive-through liquor store that would have constant traffic. We're not suggesting that there would be some additional traffic at all hours of the night. There will be specific times that the church meets, and there will be a minor influx in traffic, if at all, for the size of congregation. We just heard Ms. Hurt say this wouldn't even trigger a traffic study if we were seeking a higher standard to rezone. A CUP is not carte blanche for my clients to come in, build an extraordinary structure, light it up to heaven. They have to apply for permits. They have to apply for permits to widen the road. That has been suggested. They've agreed to do that. They have to get the permits to build what they need to build. They have already erected a privacy fence that will go very far, I think, to insulate from some of the noise that they may be worried about. They've done a lot of these things ahead of time in order to continue to protect the quiet use and enjoyment of their neighbors. They have no intention of upsetting this. I would suggest to the board that any church in a more rural part of this county would have this exact same problem. They're going to be surrounded by residential homes. That's the idea. You plant a church so that people can come to the church. You are not going to have a line of churches side by side so that they're all identical. A compatible use means that it's not incompatible. Nothing that's going to happen on this property by the use of my clients is going to impact the ability to have your home there. It's a beautiful area. They are going to apply for every permit needed. They are going to abide by all standards that is required of them in order to continue to protect this area. This is very much in line with 2030 focus, that we continue to protect some of that agricultural area. We're not putting up apartments. None of that is happening. We don't have carte blanche to do anything and everything on this property. A church is more than just a house of worship. I concede that. But that's what we're asking for here, that these folks be allowed to worship in a building that's already pre-existing. No suggestions have been made by the opposition that we add any additional shrubbery or anything else along the property line, but we would entertain any suggestions that the board may have to make this more palatable for the board and for those property owners. I'd also like to just point out to the board again, just look at the property of what we're dealing with here. We have open fields. The majority of this area is surrounded by open fields. We have one adjacent landowner that is 60 foot from our current structure. This accessory building will have absolutely no use if we can't get at least a conditional use permit. Otherwise, I don't know what this property could possibly be used for. When it went up for sale in August, it could have been purchased by anyone for any purpose, and we're asking that a church be installed there.
All right, thank you. I guess you get the last word, sir. Thank you, ma'am, appreciate it. I'm sorry?
Applicant gets the last.
Oh,
He doesn't.
If he,
I'm sorry.
happy to respond.
no, it's fine, I'm fine. All right. That's where well, when I said him, that's what I was getting to. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to say tonight besides the two attorneys? Any other comments from anyone else? Yes, sir. Will you come up, please? If we can need to swear you in, your full name and address, please.
Brent Folk, 610 Matlock Road.
And you swear to tell the truth, sir?
I do.
Go right ahead.
Just that we did put an offer in on it, but it was a ridiculously high price they were asking, so it was rejected. And we hear the activities in our kitchen already that are already going on there. And the fence that was built, I don't think was surveyed, or it was just kind of thrown up real quick, and it doesn't match the other surrounding fences. So that kind of concerns me about following traditional guidelines and stuff like that. So that's what I had to say.
So when you bought this property, they had already subdivided these two properties separately?
Correct.
Okay. And do you know what the purpose of that building was originally? I mean, why'd they build it?
It was Spongy Acres Bed and Breakfast, and they catered to the Corvette crowd, so they used it to work on stuff, Corvettes to park their cars, that kind of thing.
And the fourth side of what happens if the Corvette bed and breakfast doesn't work, what we do with this building?
Well, it was at his shop, and she does an online business where she made, sock monkeys that she sold online was the business that she operated out of the house when they lived there.
Yeah.
And then they lived in the unit after it was split until they sold it.
Okay. All right. Any questions of this gentleman? Thank you very much, sir. Would you like to say something? Come on. And we'll need to swear you in also, sir.
Andy Baker, 684 Matlock.
And you swear to tell the truth, sir?
I do.
Thank you. Go right ahead.
The property that we're talking about, when Clinton Wani Cronenberger bought the place about 17 years ago, we were already living at our place. He put that building up. He had an RV in there. He had his race car in there. Very nice building. They could not, they've tried to sell that property for probably 6 or 7 years at different price points and things of that nature. I think what it fell down to is that they figured they would be able to sell, obviously, the home if it was by itself. And at the point we built, our structure had to be the most the structure closest to the road. So, that was kind of where we were at on that, going, well, it's just kind of dead area back there. We kind of figured the person who bought the farm behind us might be interested in that acreage back there. But, we are already talking about making improvements to the property. We're already talking about being there after 9 o'clock, almost 10 o'clock some nights before daylight savings time. A lot of the kids outside playing volleyball and things of that nature. We live right next door to it, so we have a straight shot. There is no fence on our side, but that property's been for sale for quite some time. So it wasn't like it just went for sale and somebody jumped on it. It had been available for quite some time.
All right. Very good.
Yep.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? Any other comments from anybody? Either side, one way or the other? Yes, sir. And then you swear you in too, please.
Yes, sir. My name's Steve Martin, 306 Stockton Drive, Owensboro, Kentucky.
Do you swear to tell the truth, sir?
Yes, sir.
Go right ahead.
I'm a licensed architect here in Kentucky, Kentucky license number 8503. My services, as well as the services of Sky Engineering here in Bowling Green, have been procured by our clients to assist them in this process with their property. I wasn't brought into the project until about a month ago. This had been going on for a while. So I've tried to take the reins, working with Katie to establish where we are with property, what needs to be done to get them in it. As far as the renovations that have been mentioned, it's a bare minimum of renovations to occupy the building and meet current Kentucky building code. We'll be increasing insulation from about 3.5 inches that it has now to almost 10 altogether. So more than doubling it, which will also affect the sound and help encapsulate sound transmission inside the building so that that's not an issue outside of the structure. Lighting on the exterior should not be an issue. We're not adding any parking lights or anything of that nature other than minimum required building-mounted egress lighting, things of that nature that only project a limited distance. Other than that, all the renovations are going to be inside. All the 6 overhead doors of the structure are going to go away and be filled in and enclose those. We'll have a more solid structure once the renovations are complete. Improved plumbing and everything necessary for the congregation size and to meet current codes, fire alarm system, smoke detection, those types of things. So we're not planning anything excessive. We're planning, provided they're allowed the conditional use permit, the renovations would just be what is needed to get into the building to utilize it for what they want to utilize it for. They don't have any extensive goals of doing anything beyond that at this time, other than just getting in the structure and being able to congregate in that space. But the renovations that take place will address some of those issues with sound, light, things of that nature. It's not going to make anything worse. If anything, it's going to make those conditions better.
Thank you very much, sir. Anyone else? Any comments?
Mr. Chairman, probably appropriate just to ask Mr. Davenport if he has any closing remarks, and then Ms. Embry to close it as well.
You got it.
I would just urge the board to look closely at your policies. Make your decisions based upon that your staff has provided to you. You're hearing things that don't address the policy. You're hearing, well, there's nothing else we can do with the property. And I'll just tell you, there's no reason why you couldn't put a single-family home on that lot in front of the structure that exists. There are other uses. Regardless, that's not a policy for this board to consider. So if you look at the policies, they just simply are not met. And I will say, Ms. Embry's statement that, well, we've addressed traffic, or we've addressed the road improvements. I read condition number 1. All condition number 1 says if they change to a new access point, they'll have to coordinate. And then it says future road improvements will be coordinated. I don't know what that means. I do know there's no condition to make any improvements. And that's what I would expect to see. Something like Matlock Road will be widened to X feet. They're not required to do that. This CUP passes, they don't ever have to do that. And so this is a commercial enterprise, and I appreciate there are churches on ag properties that have CUPs. I doubt they're with proximity. And I don't know about the application she talked about. I wasn't here in April. I don't know where there's a church on Crutzen. But every application is different. And you've got to look at what's before you. And given those factors in your staff report, I do not think they've met their burden. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity, and I'll do my best to keep it brief. My clients have not offered to widen Matlock Road because it's not required. The impact that traffic would have for this size of a congregation in this area simply would not require that. If we were seeking the higher burden to rezone the property, which we are not, we would be addressing traffic. And we've already done that through the efforts of staff. There have been no issues with that. No one has raised any red flags. Had they, my clients and I would have addressed them in more detail within the application. There's simply not going to be an influx of traffic in this area that would require us to address anything further than we have already addressed. Our application meets with the intent of the agricultural district. I already touched upon that. It will be compatible with existing uses of the adjacent property. You've heard from adjacent landowners tonight. This has not just been an agricultural property. It's been utilized for other commercial enterprises in the very recent past, including housing things, including housing corvettes. If we want to talk about noise, perhaps we should talk about that. This would not be hazardous, detrimental, or disturbing. Nothing about the institution of a church would be hazardous. Frankly, I think it's quite the opposite. Secondarily, it's not going to adversely affect the development of the general neighborhood. As you've heard, this is a well-established area. There's farmland surrounding it. To the extent a developer wants to come in sometime down the road, they're going to have to go through a similar process, get rezoned, and develop something else. My clients being granted a CUP does, again, not give them carte blanche to do whatever they want on this property. They will still have oversight. Staff has already told us on another application tonight that they're involved in the permitting process. They will continue to ensure that all conditions that are put upon this property tonight are followed as permits are granted to my clients, if and when they are granted to my clients. My clients are well aware of all of their requirements, having worked with Steve and myself to make this a house of worship, and they would ask that you do that. I specifically pointed out that prior application not because a CUP was granted, but because a CUP was granted for a church of a nearly identical size in a nearly identical area. That church was about 100 to 150 members. Our church is 100 to 150 members. It's a largely residential area where that church is being offered. That church was being built, newly constructed, on 5.5 acres. Our church has 10.5 acres on which to house their church, and they're asking to do it in a small portion of that has already existed. I'd ask that you do look closely at all of the findings that need to be met. Understand that my clients have met every single one of them and have addressed each of the concerns that have been brought forward to the board tonight.
Just for information to you, the
Yes.
church you're talking about on Cruising Lane,
Yes.
there was already another church on that road established.
I
Just
understand.
let you know there was precedent for that church being there.
There is.
All right. Any other questions from the board? Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it. I assume you were finished. I wasn't trying to make you stop.
No, I'm done. I
thought
just
you were.
wanted
I'm
to
sorry.
receive any questions if there were.
Any questions from the board? Thank you very much.
Thank you all for your time.
All righty. Motion, please.
I make the motion to deny the conditional use permit docket number 2023-C-71 for a religious institution located at 632 Matlock Road because the use would result in increased traffic congestion. The location of the building is not compatible with the residential area.
It's a proper motion.
Okay. Motion by Ms. Atkinson, second by somebody? Second?
If not, it'll die.
Second? Nobody?
I'll second it, so we can get it.
Sure. Second by Dr. Fitz.
Ms. Atkinson?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson?
No.
Dr. Fitz?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Ms. Price?
Yes.
Chair Davenport?
Yes. That request has been denied, ma'am. You've got 30 days to take it to circuit court. I understand what you're trying to do, but it's just not the right place for the church, it doesn't seem like. Sorry about that. All righty. I need to sign the minutes from last month. And do we have any old business besides approval of the bylaws? Yeah.
No, sir, not that I'm aware of.
Would somebody leave? That's not.
So the only other item for your consideration this evening is an adjustment to the bylaws.
Okay.
You should have received those in your packet. The proposed changes are highlighted or indicated in red. Do y'all have any questions about any of the proposed amendments or any other amendments you think we should add?
Nothing bothered me about anybody else. We probably need to have an election of officers next month. We haven't had one in some time, just so we can comply with the bylaws in case some smart attorney comes in here one night and says, y'all aren't operating properly, you haven't elected your officers. So we probably need, it said the first quarter of each year, so maybe next month we need to elect our officers for the following
Yeah,
year.
we can certainly do that at our first meeting of
Yeah,
2024.
Probably a good idea, just so we can stay in compliance. Yeah. All right, the board got any comments, questions, anything we need to do? Dr. Fitz?
When did we ever, when required that boundary survey shall be prepared by surveyor?
It used to be a requirement. Right now, it's still required for a variance, and anything that determines a distance from a property line, or if someone's requested a waiver for a lot coverage or something like that, we still do require a survey. The zoning ordinance was amended to reflect that, so this would just be matching the current language that's in the zoning ordinance.
Okay. All right. Do we need a motion to approve these? Is that what we need to do that?
Yes, if you would.
All right. A motion to approve the bylaws changes
So move.
by Ms. Atkinson, second by
Second.
Ms. Price.
Ms. Atkinson?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
Dr. Fitz?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Ms. Price?
Yes.
Chair Davenport?
Yes, I do approve. That's it. I need to sign last month's minutes, I think. Oh, she got them over there. Okay, that's fine. Any other new business tonight? Anything else?
We included a meeting schedule for 2024.
Yeah. Sorry. Today was a deadline for the January 11th BOA meeting, and we did not have any submittals turned in today as of 4:30 when we left, so, Do what?
We
yeah.
won't have anything
yeah.
in January.
You're kidding
So
me.
your January is free, but,
Well, my goodness.
yep.
I was looking forward
How
to
did
that
that
paycheck. I was going to buy me a bottle of whiskey with it.
Let's give an update of where
How are we gonna pay for your gas?
Oh, sure.
Like
So
gas,
short-term rental, we've kind of gotten through, of course, we started in April, and we sent out some NOVs in October, and I think that they are in a pretty good place. I think that's why we didn't have anything for January, is that we've got kind of the ones that were not in compliance, brought that to our attention, and so maybe in a couple months, we'll go back through and just kind of get, the additional ones, but I think hopefully maybe the crazy short-term rental marathon that we had might be behind us.
Well, we certainly hope so.
Maybe. But yeah, so most of them have removed their listings or have applied for their CUPs,
Yeah.
that sort of thing, so.
How many Airbnbs do we have in our county?
I have not done a final tally. There's still some that are hanging out that are not in full compliance because they still need their short-term rental brochure completed. But I would say maybe 100 maybe?
100 left?
I think, no, not 100 left. 100 that have been are permitted by right or have been approved for CUPs for that.
All right. Well, Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you, and Happy New Year, since we're not going to be here New Year. Yeah. Well, Happy Valentine's Day, too. It's going to be after Valentine's Day. Get all of them at once. Thank you. We're adjourned. Let me hit my hand.